In Trump and MAGA, males across most especially these three groups responded emotionally. It wasn't just the price of eggs and gas and all that. It was the emotional response to the injustice of it all. There are three critical groups that must be kept firmly in the MAGA camp, who shifted dramatically towards Trump and the America First movement, that counter-revolution in 2024 that we're still in the middle of right now. Those three groups are Catholics, Hispanics, and voters under 45. The shift to America First was especially notable among males across the board, especially Catholic males who slam dunked for Trump by 25 points. Hispanics, while still voting for Harris overall, shifted heavily towards Trump, lowering the margin to just 12 points, down from 20 for Biden and over 30 for Hillary. And when it comes to votes under 45, those voters, what political experts call young voters, I guess that's all your perspective, it was nearly a tie, with Harris finishing just a couple points ahead. That wiped out Biden's 18 points win in that age group from 2020 and Hillary's similar one back in 2016. Among young voters, males actually voted in favor of Trump by 8 points. Now, there are a number of factors that seem to be at work here: the economy, illegal immigration, strong anti-woke sentiments, and a kind of secret sauce factor of males in particular wanting masculinity reestablished. Various polls and surveys, not to mention a general drift on social media, all seem to indicate a kind of anti-women's lib movement is bound up with the whole America First movement. Between podcasts and tens of thousands of comments across multiple platforms, the male voters seems to be on course for a major realignment, especially in those three critical groups. You get the sense that while all of the country was, of course, concerned about the economy and illegal immigration and the trans bombardment and foreign wars and all of that, there was something else at play that pollsters can't really measure, at least not effectively. It's hard to poll an attitude or an intuition. The closest way, perhaps, that they do that is asking that famous right direction, wrong direction question that does get asked quite frequently. But that doesn't measure the why. It just measures the that. Elections are funny things, what they typically revolve around, particular issues that people have emotional responses to. This is the underlying truth that no one really talks about, that politics is spiritual, touching on mind and body and soul, all implanted in our very nature by God himself, straight back to the garden. So, like human beings ourselves, we take in relatively objective data and then respond to it both intellectually, but just as importantly, if sometimes not more importantly, emotionally. Why does a young man, for example, who's committed to wanting to, say, raise a family, respond so negatively to communist Democrat policies that impede that goal? It's kind of an obvious answer, but here's what digging down reveals. It's not just an intellectual proposition laid out before him. He wants, as in emotionally desires something, and wants these policies and their backers defeated. Males in particular are appealed to through with their emotions through their intellects. Desiring justice, for example, that's ultimately an emotional longing. Being able to provide and protect those he loves is ultimately, that's an emotional thing. In Trump and MAGA, males across most especially these three groups responded emotionally. It wasn't just the price of eggs and gas and all that. It was the emotional response to the injustice of it all. What's happening right now with the whole Doge thing, for example, men in particular are ticked off that what looks like trillions of tax dollars have been stolen or mismanaged or both. It's unjust. That's the intellectual part of the equation. But it deprives them of living the life they want, affording a house, raising a family, all that sort of stuff. That's the emotional response. Likewise, as more and more of the corruption is being exposed, there's a growing anger regarding justice. Men want these crooks going to prison. They want them prosecuted, they want them perp-walked, and they want them imprisoned for depriving them of their livelihoods and robbing them blind for years. The weak sauce response from the corrupt class is to whine incessantly about Elon and his young males rummaging through all our private information, as if the corrupt ruling class in government hasn't already been doing that in spades for years and more than likely decades. It's an argument that is failing. Calling Elon unelected is beyond laughable. It overlooks the reality that, well, so also are the 2 million bureaucrats that are in process right now, thankfully, of being downsized, fired, and laid off. These three groups, and especially the men within them, Catholics, Hispanics, and young voters, are going to have to remain engaged with the America First crowd, or better put, the America First crowd is going to have to remain engaged with them. Judging from the past, their natural tendency is precisely the opposite, to be unengaged, unplugged in. The argument, in fact, could easily be made that their lack of vigilance, being not plugged in enough, contributed to the current crisis. Engaging them in a meaningful way, keeping them plugged in and active, is the only way to ensure the counter-revolution is successful. MAGA and America First must keep its aim firmly fixed on this. Coming to you from Houston, Texas, yeehaw, I'm Gary Michael Voris. God love you.